Okay, good morning. Today, in our continuation of our conversation on reincarnation, I'm going to talk about actualizing our soul potential. Now, if you remember 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the primordial atom. So I want you to remember that, the idea of the primordial atom. I also want you to remember, I want you to remember some of the other conversations that we've had over the past 2 weeks. So in relation to the concept of the body soul of the primordial atom, or maybe we can call it the cosmic atom, and the notion that we spoke about of the soul root that we spoke about last week. Kabbalah discusses the idea that the human form is subdivided into 613 parts, 248 main organs, and 365 principal veins and arteries. Now, which of the body parts or veins are included in this count and which are left out, we never know because it was never disclosed to us. But the way that the discussion happens is about 248 organs and 365 veins or arteries. Maybe this was a meta-biological construct. Maybe some of the people who in this class who have studied acupuncture, there are 365 acupuncture points on the body. So maybe there's some kind of connection there. It's hard to know because there's not really any other description besides the 248 and 365, and this idea that the human form is subdivided into a collective 613 parts. Either way, whether understood physically or understood metaphysically, this is the way the sages deciphered the human form. As the soul animates the body and the spirit enlivens matter, the soul too, just like the body, is comprised of 613 energies or 613 soul attributes. And it's specifically through spiritually oriented activities that utilize the body that the soul is able to achieve its full crystallization, its full self-actualization, its full completion. Although we have to keep in mind that as the soul is a spark of the divine, as the soul is a spark of the infinite, its essential core is not dividable and it's not reducible. So there's just 613 soul attributes, but it's still one soul. We don't have 613 souls. Now, this number, 613, for those of you who are aware, is correlated to something else. The 613 body parts, the 613 soul energies, are correlated to the 613 mitzvot in the Torah. There are, if you go through the Torah and you count all the mitzvahs that God gives to us in the Torah, you're going to come up with a number 613. What's fascinating about it is if you subdivide those mitzvahs between positive commandments and negative commandments, you're going to come up with 248 positive commandments and 365 negative commandments. To add to it, there's also 365 days of a solar year. Now, according to Kabbalah, aligning oneself with the mitzvahs, which serve as the inner purpose and directives of creation, whether by actively participating in a particular action or refraining from others, it allows the soul to soar to the most exalted and the most elated heights possible. The full array of mitzvahs grants an individual the opportunity to fully bring into fruition all the various aspects of the soul as they're expressed through the body. Each distinct mitzvah taps into another reservoir of spiritual energy and sets the soul free, allowing for the soul to express itself in its most expansive way. By physically performing a particular mitzvah, the corresponding attribute within the soul is activated, and as a result, the soul as a whole attains an even greater and more comprehensive state of completion than when it existed in its pure spirit prior to descending into the human form. So the soul in its purest state, the soul in its state, we'll call it the primordial state, because it's the ethereal state. The soul in the ethereal state is one. But when the soul comes into this world, and by using the body, it actualizes. It's kind of like, think about it as a gamified way. All of a sudden, boom, mitzvah 1, it actualizes that soul spark of mitzvah 1. Mitzvah 2, it actualizes that soul spark of mitzvah 2. 613, it's able to actualize. But the fact is, and again, I'm saying gamified, but it's not really gamified, because it's not about people get worried. Oh, does that mean I have to collect them all? No, that doesn't mean you have to collect them all, because it's not really gamified. If you collect one, you've already actualized more soul spark than could have been actualized before your soul came into this world. If you collect 2, you've doubled the chances, doubled the actualization. Collect 4, you've quadrupled the actualization of the soul before it came into this world. But the soul came into this world in order to experience these soul sparks. The way these soul sparks are experienced is by actualizing the mitzvah. For some reason, I don't know why, I wasn't around, but Judaism became, at some point, about the mitzvahs we don't do versus the mitzvahs we do, which means people got worried about, oh, I'm not a good Jew because I don't do this. I'm not a good Jew because I don't do this. A friend of mine who's a prison chaplain went to meet a Jewish man who was on death row. I won't go through the entire story, but he was thinking to himself, what do I say to someone who's on death row? What do I say to someone who's in solitary confinement? What's your purpose in this world? And after a very difficult conversation, the rabbi turns to this man on death row and says, I want to tell you that you are a righteous person. Obviously dumbfounded, he turns to the rabbi and he says, I'm anything but righteous. Why are you calling me a righteous person? And he said, you're a righteous person because you do most of the mitzvahs. Again, he turns to him and says, what do you mean? I do nothing here. I'm in solitary. I'm waiting to die. And he said, when was the last time you stole? He said, I'm in the hole. I can't steal. When was the last time you murdered? I'm in the hole. I can't murder. He said, every single moment that you are in solitary, you are doing most of the commandments. It's 365 things that you don't do, which is most of the commandments, which means you are actualizing 365 of your soul sparks, of the 613 soul sparks. Every single moment that you're doing nothing, that makes you a righteous person. Cheryl, please.
On that topic, so are you saying that there are active and passive mitzvot?
No, it's not active and passive. It's the mitzvah is do not murder. Every moment that you do not murder, you're completing the mitzvah, do not murder.
Okay, I understand that, but you also said at some point earlier, I was going to stop you because I didn't understand then. You said the 613 mitzvot were divided into good and bad.
Well, they're divided into positive and negative. Negative means something you don't do. Positive means an action that you do.
Okay.
Sorry, and they're all. If I didn't clarify.
Yeah. Well, I should have. I sort of understood it, but I wanted to make sure. So when primordial Adam died, is the word died? I don't know. When his body left this earth, were those all the different parts of Adam that we're all trying to put back together, and that's what will cause the Mashiach? I'm so confused because I have so many notes.
The primordial Adam was the Adam before Eve was created, which means it's the Adam in the Garden of Eden before the sin, before the original sin.
Okay.
So it's not about alive or dead. What happened was exactly what you're thinking, and I spoke about this a few weeks ago, is that after the sin and they were banned, Adam and Eve were banned from the Garden of Eden, all the sparks were it was like a shattering of the vessel. And part of our job in this world is to gather the sparks. I can go into this in a lot more detail. I'm not, but that's the concept. You can read more about it if you read more about the shattering of the sparks.
Yes. It's just the concept, and I'm usually good when you do your metaphors.
Yes.
And I'm thinking of Adam's body laying there with a foot there and an arm there and a finger there and whatever, and those being the sparks, and they're not, obviously.
Right.
So it's the sparks, it's all of the sparks that are scattered that we need to find for our individual souls so that we can all get along better, basically.
Exactly. I have a friend here today. You want to say hello?
Hi, sweetheart. You're going to be our new teacher? Someday. You will.
Yes. This is Yair.
Thank you.
What's her name?
His name is Yair.
Is his name Yair? Hello, good morning.
Yair is 2, and we have a tradition that it says in the Bible that just like it says that man is like a tree in the fields. That's attacked. It says man is like a tree in the field, and a tree we don't touch for the first 3 years of life, and so we don't cut a boy's hair for the first 3 years of life, and at 3 years old we have a big hair cutting ceremony.
That's also in Islam, isn't it? I believe so.
I don't know.
Yeah. I have a
It's from
cousin.
the Torah. The Torah, because the Torah likens man to a tree in the field, that's the source of it.
And that's where you start teaching them the alphabet, isn't it, during that
That's at
time?
3 years old is when we start education, exactly, even though we start beforehand, right? Do you know Aleph?
Yum, yum. Aleph.
What other letters do you know?
Sure.
You know Shin? What else?
That's him.
Oh yeah? Come on.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to continue. Do you want to stay here? Or you want to go?
Yes.
Okay. So generally speaking, so did I clarify this? I think I clarified this, right? We understand all of this? Oh, yeah. Yes, we're good.
It's not completely easy to grasp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else that I can clarify that would make it a little easier to grasp?
Well, it just makes me think maybe I should just sit in the house and do nothing, just in case.
No, that's not that's not the point. That's not the point. You see, that's the scary. And then what ends up happening is you can hear the story about the man on death row, and you say, well, at least I shouldn't do anything because at least I'm doing most of the mitzvahs by doing nothing. Well, that's not the point. The point is to do. But you should also know at the same time that you're not doing anything wrong by not doing. A lot of people are worried, oh, I'm not a good enough person. I'm not a good enough human. I'm not a good enough Jew because I don't do enough. I don't do everything. I think for me, the point of this is that I can do whatever the best that I can do. And every mitzvah that I do is very valuable. It's not collect them all. It's do whatever the best that I can do. But at the same time that I'm doing the best that I can do, by not doing all those things, I'm already starting with most of the mitzvahs.
So if we don't know intellectually or in our hearts all the mitzvahs, then we don't have to consciously always be thinking about mitzvah, because
right.
it's just happening spontaneously.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
I had a question about.
Yes, please, Julian.
Thank you. The terminology. So, the soul sparks. I've heard that in general terms as like the individual soul or the individual soul spark of a person, but the context here is that the soul sparks are within the soul. So to me, that sounded more like connections. But is it because the soul sparks could actually become different souls later on when we get up to the reincarnation? Is that why that terminology is used?
It's a very good question. I think at some point we can talk about it. It's a much broader idea, the idea of the sparks that were spread out. I don't want to overwhelm everybody, but let's hold on that idea until we have an opportunity to do a deep dive on it.
Okay.
But what I
don't know if I could ask you two minor ones.
Yeah.
Thank you. What one is, it was just with the hair. Does it make the children stronger like Samson?
No,
He didn't cut his
Samson
hair.
was a Nazarite.
And is it the same?
Samson was a Nazarite. The Nazarite is what makes is where that strength comes from. We just do this because of yeah, and the girls do not have the same tradition.
Oh.
The girls yeah.
Oh.
I had a question, Rabbi.
Yes, please.
Okay. You were saying, like, in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve sinned. Lately, like when I'm going back to the story and thinking also about stuff I read in the Tanya, you know, how you have a righteous person and a righteous person who suffers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I couldn't find this again in the source, but there was a argument between Rabbi Zalman, who wrote it, and his rabbi, uh, where he kind of took a position where the suffering brings more awareness to that righteousness. Like if you never suffered, you wouldn't be aware. And when you look at the story of Adam and Eve, it seems like apparent that before they ate from the tree, they didn't know the difference between good and evil. And maybe it was intentional of Hashem to shatter it in order to bring us together, to make us suffer as part of his creation.
It's a very, very difficult question to answer, because the idea of suffering is A, it's a choice of our own, and B, as a result of the suffering is a choice of our own. The pain that we experience, Kabbalah differentiates pain and suffering. Pain can last a moment, suffering will last as long as we want. But the pain that we experience in this world is worth myriads in the world to come. Which is why we don't talk about quality of life. We only talk about life.
I'm trying to understand the difference between pain and suffering. I mean, the fact that we live in a lower level, we're all,
Well,
you could
I'll
call
explain.
it pain, you could call
If
it
you stub-
suffering.
If you stub your toe for about 20 seconds, it hurts.
Right.
But then if you turn around and start victimizing yourself because you're a stub toe victim, that's suffering.
Oh, okay, I see. But I think also pain in and of itself is a thought. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
stubbed my toe, and some people, they don't even feel the pain.
That's right.
Sure, but and
And
I
the
agree.
reason why is
That's a tzaddik. That's a true tzaddik.
no, but pain we can't control. So the tzaddik varalo that you're referring to is experiencing pain in this world. You can't control the pain, but you can always control the suffering.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think to reach the highest levels, you're kind of a true servant, you know, and nothing belongs to you, and you're constantly living the world without any suffering, and maybe even without pain. I mean, I guess it's you feel it, but you might there's a lot on pain. Like I myself have gone through some chronic pain, which I overcame a lot of it through the mind. So I believe that even the pain itself, like the physical pain, you can overcome. But yeah, I think the question I have is all the righteous people we read about in the Torah. It seems like they've went through hard lives, you know, like all of them. And the question is there such a thing really as a person who never suffers, or everyone who experiences life goes through a stage where they're shattered and now they need to grow again? Like, I don't understand the Tanya where they say there's this concept of a righteous person born righteous and just never, you know, went through that.
I think for the sake of this conversation, I don't know if suffering is the right word, but there is nobody that can live through this world without pain. There's going to be some form of pain in this world.
Sure. That's what I meant. I mean, I think I'm defining it the same, but okay.
Yeah. So I think that for the sake of our conversation, everyone experiences pain. And going back to Mom's question, which I think is a very important question, is that why I brought this up is it's so important for us to focus on what we do. There's an idea of somebody who doesn't, a child who doesn't know, is called a tinok shenishba, a child that was never educated. And I think there's a lot of the people in our society, in our world, because of, for whatever reason, were never educated Jewishly, they're never educated spiritually. And so therefore, we would consider them tinok shenishba, that we would consider them like children who were never educated. So if you're thinking of this and say, well, I don't know the mitzvahs, I don't know, maybe every single day I'm doing something wrong. You're not doing anything wrong because you were never educated. But once you're educated, now you know, and you can't unknow what you know. So I think that's a very, very important thing. And for me, the story of the man on death row gives a lot of solace to those people who haven't had the education to know what's a mitzvah, not a mitzvah, knowing that you can do the best you can in this world, but by being an ethical and moral person, you're doing most of the mitzvahs. I want to finish this idea, and then I'm sure there'll be more questions that will come up, and we'll go to, but I know time is of the essence. Generally speaking, the three elements of the soul that we spoke about, three levels of the soul that are connected to this world, which are the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama. They're the three stages of the soul that are connected to this world. They unfold and become consciously felt in a progressive fashion because they are connected to time and space. So because they're connected to time and space, we feel them progressively. For example, first we develop on a nefesh level. Then we'll develop on a ruach level, and then eventually it will go on to the level of neshama. So there's a linear progression because these are the three levels of our soul that are connected to this world. Only once the entire structure of nefesh, the first level of our soul, has evolved and been entirely articulated through the correlating mitzvahs that correlates to the soul power of nefesh, only then will the nefesh level be transcended and included to that with that of the ruach. And the same process repeats itself, moving from ruach to neshama. Reincarnation, which is where we were going. Reincarnation occurs when the sparks of the soul that were not fully articulated in one lifetime resurface in another human form to be worked on and fully expressed. So, your soul is not bound by time and space, and your soul doesn't only belong to your body. While your soul is in the world of falsehood, this world, it is connected to the body, and its job is to fully express its soul powers. If for whatever reason, whether you didn't know, whether you didn't want to know, whether you did the best you could and you weren't physically able to help your soul actualize all its soul powers, whatever those are, your soul will have to come back. And it could be that your soul, actually, most probably, your soul has come back into this world because a previous incarnation of your soul wasn't able to complete all its soul powers. The mitzvahs are the tools through which the soul attains excellence in this world. So, theoretically, our aspirations should be to achieve excellence in all aspects of life. Yet practically, we achieve perfection or as close to it as we can in only certain areas of our life. Every individual, every human, every incarnation has at least one mitzvah that human is what is called Zahir Tfei. Zahir Tfei is Z or Z-A-H-I-R-T-F-E-I. E-I, Zahir Tfei, which means they are careful in performing. Zahir can also be translated as illuminating or shining. So every person has at least one mitzvah that they shine on. One mitzvah they're connected with. And that mitzvah is their Zahir Tzvei. That's part of, or a good portion of their soul purpose. Maybe, each soul has to come back into this world 613 times. Because each time the soul's in this world, it completed to its perfection one mitzvah. One mitzvah, meaning one thing that this is my mitzvah, this is what I do. I think this concept can be understood as implying that there's at least one mitzvah that every person is connected with, one positive area that each of us excels in. And that one mitzvah becomes the source of our personal radiance. Overall, every person displays some degree of uniqueness, some degree of specialty, even if it's only in one area of life. There are some people, for example, who are remarkably compassionate. They're wonderful humanitarians. And yet they have a hard time relating to their own family. They may have a challenging relationship with their parents and their siblings or their children. There are others who are fantastic at interfamilial relationships. They're so good with their parents, with their children, with their siblings. But they have difficulties when it comes to parting with their hard-earned money. They don't give much charity. Whatever the mitzvah is, it is that correlating energy within the soul that becomes ultimately connected with and joined to. In fact, we find that the 1, 2, or 3 areas that an individual excels in are the primary focus of that person's spiritual development. And all other goals, aspirations, all other achievements flow from that particular domain. Excuse me. All of one's life, including their own interpretations of experiences, their own interpretations of expressions, is founded on their own uniqueness and individuality. If you notice that whenever you're asked to capture or encapsulate in 1 or 2 words another person, you're always going to discover something unique to say about them. You may employ some basic generic terms, say the person's gracious, or the person's thoughtful, or they're serious and responsible, or they're lighthearted and cheerful, or they're a good parents, or they're a really good friends. The point is that each of us experience our own uniqueness. And it doesn't mean that we're a bad person. It's not to the exclusion of everything else. We experience our own uniqueness because that is part of what our soul is doing in this world. There are always traces of positivity within every person. Every person, even somebody on death row, you can find a trace of positivity within them. And often, this positive aspect of character is so powerful that it appears that everything else in that person's life is an extension or a derivative of that particular trait. And it's not a bad thing. Our job in this world is not to be perfect. Our job in this world is to be better. And every single day to do the best we can with the talents and the abilities that we have and the education that we have. It's so easy to focus on the things that we don't do. Harder to focus on what we do. It's easy to put ourselves down. It's harder to focus on building ourselves up. The Torah wants us to focus on building ourselves up, wants us to focus on what we do and not on what we don't do. And what we're special in, what is our uniqueness, that is going to be our soul spark. And that may be our soul's purpose, to be able to actualize that uniqueness in this world. I'd love to, first of all, any questions?
Since I know you're very active in the dating, matchmaking world, do you look for those souls that have similar sparks that I don't even know how to explain this, but if I explore my own spark, let's take out the dating thing. And Jill and I are both very compassionate, educated, curious, blah, blah, blah people. Will we attract and then eventually destroy each other? Like, I'm more, you're less, you're more. Does that like dissipate and kill each other out? I mean, if there's 613 mitzvot, but there's 630 souls, there's a lot of souls competing for a lot of those mitzvot, and they may be coming at the same time.
Cheryl, you're asking for under the hood. Under the hood, we're not looking for the similar, we're looking for complementary. But we have to be.
I remember you saying something once about similar.
That's right.
Somebody asked, well, don't opposites attract? Well, in a marriage, no, you want similar.
Right. So we have to be very careful because opposites don't attract. It's similarities that attract. So we want similar and complementary. And yes, there's a skill to that. I can teach that skill of how to find that in another person to be able to know how to match two people up. Mom, please.
I want to know, if it is possible, what would it look like with our eyes if a person completes that spark in that person completed all mitzvah in that body, the last one was completed. Is that even possible? And what would that look like?
It happens sometimes that a person comes into this world for a month or two, or for a year or two, or for 5 or 10, and they pass away before their time, maybe even for 50, but not for 120. And it's very possible that they only came into this world to complete one mitzvah that their soul needed to complete, and the soul was complete now, and then it doesn't need to be in this world anymore.
But what if a person lives till they're 90 and they have completed the purpose and the mitzvahs?
And it just means that that soul won't come back. Whenever that soul has completed all its purpose in this world and all its incarnations, then it gets to bask in the rays and does not come back into this world.
And who gets to make that decision in a checklist?
The administration.
The one above, that one?
Yeah, you can reach them at at angels@administration.hvn.
Okay. I'll make sure I remember that. Thank you.
Yeah. They're available 24/7 and beyond time and space as well. Julianne.
Thank you. I had two things. The first was maybe we could say complementary parts of the similar.
Not similar, because similarities, like Cheryl was saying, if maybe two compassionate people may not be good together, it's complementary. I'll give you an example, and I'm going very, very, I don't want to go too much off the charts here, but just think of it this way. You know what? I don't want, because it's a whole different conversation. It's a fascinating conversation. I don't want to start bringing up all these conversations. Already today, I think, was very complicated for a lot of us. So let's leave it for now. But keep it as a question about the difference between complementary and similar, and I will at some point get to it.
Oh, thank you. And the second thing was, you were saying about that we're here to express all of our soul powers. And it occurred to me, some people have these really weird spiritual powers or mystical powers, like telepathy, telekinesis, levitation, even meditation. So all these things that are really strange, are they things that we're supposed to express, or are they regarded as things we're not supposed to express?
Sometimes yes, sometimes not. It depends on how they're expressed, and it depends on what purpose. Anything that's expressed to build the individual up, the ego up, then we know it's wrong. If it's done in a way that's altruistic, and it's done in the proper way, then it could actually be something that could help and achieve the soul power. But you have to know the difference between doing it for the ego and doing it altruistically, and the source of which means it can have this particular source. There's some meditation that's fantastic, and some that its source is not a good source.
Oh, what about, say, people that speak to the dead, like mediums? Because they could be helping people. It could be because people are in distress rather than to build up their ego or their money. So could that be either? Or is that
There are some things that are not meant for us to know. I mean, I know there are people who do that. I would have to, it's on an individual level of why somebody would do that. It's not a general question, but generally speaking, there's a lot of things that are not meant for us to know.
Thank you.
Some people don't have a choice. Some people speak to them. It's not them looking to speak to others.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
again,
like,
I don't. That's why I'm saying it's individual, not generalized.
because, for instance, my stepmother, they speak to her. She's not asking for it.
Yeah. So certain people have that power, and they have to learn how to utilize it, and that it shouldn't interfere with their life.
But they weren't here to use it. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that there's different ways of using it. Right? There's a positive.
Maybe they were here to use it then, but in a
right. There are people who have certain powers, and they use it to attain a certain status in this world, and that's negative. Whereas some people can use it to help others, and that's positive. I'm just giving you an example.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start with our takeaways today. We're already late. Mom, please, why don't you start?
The idea of the numbers and that they're exact numbers is something I would have to think about. I think what I'm taking away, besides the wonder of this class that Hava suggested to me, I'm thinking my takeaway would be that there could be, because just of the sheer numbers, things that were happening on a more subtle level. not just this physical form, but more subtly energetic levels, like we might see in science. You know, there's many levels that go down to, I don't know, you know, the God particle. But I want to think about that, because it just seems that the gross has something to do for sure. And also there must be subtle things that are happening that are not necessarily in this bodily awareness, but on a more subtle level. I'd like to understand that a little more.
You want to pass it on?
Cheryl.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot more to add today. I think I asked my questions. I'm going to explore more about the experience that each spark that each one of us has and how we can make that glow bigger. And yet then the flip side of my brain says, but then how about all the others? I don't have time for all the others. It's like other people get that all in a lifetime. So if I concentrate on the one that I think I'm good at, then I would think I would be a success. So I'm just going to leave it at that. More?
Yeah, I think this concept of a tzaddik, you know, I never felt it was our place to know. I mean, clearly we contemplate it all the time, but our place to know what a tzaddik is and what isn't a tzaddik, I think that's up to Hashem. But definitely, there are tzaddikim who know a lot less, and there are tzaddikim who know a lot more. Yeah, that what you said just reiterates that concept to me, that it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters how many, if you hit all 613 or not, or what matters is if you're a good person trying your best in this world. I think that's what's more important than anything.
I agree. Or do you want to pass it on?
Jill?
Thank you. Well, there was a lot in this class, but I also felt like it was kind of simplified or condensed into this one, that every person has that one mitzvah that they resonate with that makes them shine. So I think, you know, I know for me, I complicate things, and as you mentioned earlier, it's so easy to focus on what we did wrong or the negative, and this feels like it feels like it's distilled down and a little simpler, and to help get away from engaging in that suffering, and know that there's that one mitzvah there that's for us, or we're for that mitzvah. So thank you. I'll pass it to Jenna.
Hello, everyone. I had two takeaways from today. One of them was that there's a trace of positivity in everyone, and it's our job to see that. Sometimes that's hard. And the other, what you were saying, Rabbi Bernath, about having a mitzvah or more than one mitzvah that someone is more deeply connected to than others, sort of sounds like a challenge to me. And I might think that there are already mitzvot that I connect to, but perhaps there are new ones to explore and find that deeper connection with. Alessandra?
Thank you, Jenna. So I very much like the 613 sparks that are connected to a mitzvah. And since when we do a mitzvah, that's when we communicate with God. It's nice to feel that so many parts of us can actually connect with God. So I have a better understanding of how mitzvah can actually connect to God. That's my takeaway for today. And I will pass it on to Ilana.
Thank you. You always lose me when you talk about reincarnation, but and until then, I think I'm okay. And what resonates with me is, you know, not being perfect, but that our job is to be a bit better in this world. And that certainly speaks to the mitzvot and, you know, trying to be a better person every day. So that really speaks to me. And since I don't resonate with the reincarnation part, I certainly do resonate with the idea that it's our job to do the work now while we're here and while we can. And that's it. Hi, Mom. Did you go? No. You did, eh?
No.
Okay.
I did.
We went with Julian, Diana, Elsie.
Yeah. Yeah. Diana?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Great to be here. I think what spoke to me the most, maybe because I cling to things that will comfort me about the loss of people by death, is what you said toward the end about that sometimes people leave us because they have accomplished the mitzvah for which they were sent. So, and I have a question, but I heard recently in a talk that if one takes a new mitzvah on, one should not give it up. So I'm going to try to do both what you encouraged today and not give it up. Thank you.
Elsie?
Thank you. I'm definitely going to be pondering this class and just letting a few pieces settle in. Kind of thinking about, like, at what point does someone just hand themselves over to their animal soul to the point where they can't be better? Does that make sense? And then now the rest of it, I'm just letting it all fall into place still. So, Julian?
Thank you. My takeaway for today is that we're here because of what we're good at, whereas previously I'd been told we're here because of what we find difficult. And therefore, I find myself feeling enlightened, but also confused at the contradiction of these two concepts. I don't know if it means what we're good at powers us, but what we find difficult steers us as to what direction to use what we're good at to solve or to help with. It's the only guess I can make as to how to reconcile that contradiction.
Like I started today saying that I thought that there would be more questions and answers after today, and we're still have a lot to cover. But I will say is that similar to the complementary elements of the person that we're looking for, And Jenna brought this up, this idea of Ezer Kenegdo. You're looking for a helpmate against you. A helpmate against you. Think about that. That's the Torah's ideal of a partner. A helpmate against you. So when it comes to our purpose in this world, we have to focus on the things that we're good at. But the challenges in this world are going to be part of that struggle. And you know what I think about struggle. Struggle is a value. And that struggle helps us achieve and become better. It's not suffering, but it's struggle that we want in this world. We use our talents and we struggle with those things that are difficult for us. And those two together create our purpose in this world.
Thank you, Rabbi. That's really inspiring. Make them like a DNA, like wound into each other, threaded. And I don't know is there someone else to go? I don't know.
I think that's it. So I wish you all for those of you who aren't staying on for Talmud, I wish you a great week. And we're going to continue this conversation next week. So
Have a good day.
Week.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.